Good morning, everyone. So today we're going to go through kind of our beginner, the Getting Started series. This is the movement practice that I generally start with all new clients as a daily practice. The goal is to go through this class to learn it, to practice it every day for a period of time until you can do everything that we do in this class without using this video as a resource. Most important thing before we get started is understanding the rules of pain. The rules of pain are the guidance of how to get started in a movement practice, especially when you're dealing with recovering from pain and injury. If you're on a rehab process, then understanding the rules of pain is paramount in order to get from moving with pain to moving without pain. So the rules of pain are a two-part problem. The first is pain is a binary. It is either a yes or a no. You are either in pain or you are not in pain. And slight discomfort counts as a level of pain. So first part is it painful? Yes or no. Just because something is painful, say you have a yes, just because something is painful does not mean that I'm not going to encourage you to move into it, but it will change the criteria. So when we have a pain yes, the second part is we want to put it on a scale of 0 to 10. We want to quantify it. 0 being not painful, 10 being excruciating. As long as the pain is below a level 3, then it is okay to move into it slowly, cautiously, safely, non-forcefully. If it is a 3 or above, then it means that you are moving too far, too fast, and you need to slow down and back off to keep that pain level below the level 3. The way I define what is a level 3 pain is when you do a movement and it shows up on your face, your body kind of clenches up and you make the pirate look. That means you are now triggering a spinal cord level pain response in your body. Your body's going into protective mode, and that is the opposite response that we want when we're doing therapeutic related movements. And so I want to back off at that point. So if you find that you are moving in pain, stop first, slow down, and see if you can do the movement with that pain dropping down below that level 3. If you are not able to do the movement without dropping it down below a 3, then I want you to skip that movement and contact me. Schedule a consultation. The link should be down in the description below. So with all that, let's get started. Diane, sorry, I probably should have mentioned this to begin with before we got started. I'm going to be using a staff or a dowel rod for shoulder, doing some shoulder mobility. You can use a broomstick or other kind of long handle. This is about 4 feet long. So if you have something handy that you can use for that part of the session, we'll be getting to that fairly quickly. I'll take a moment if that is something that you got to run and grab. It looks like it is, so I'm going to take just a second to let you get back and drink a little bit more of my coffee. Did you find one?
Yes.
Excellent. All right. I will suggest turning off mute just in case, but if you need to voice, if something's painful, you're welcome to voice back in. All right. We're going to start in a standing position. We're going to start with our crocodile breath, crocodile breathing, and the idea of crocodile breathing is we're working to get the abdominal wall to expand, not just forward into the belly, but also out through the side walls and into the low back. Our breathing apparatus is 360 degrees, so I want to be able to get that expansion of that balloon. That ensures that we have a nice, good, solid dynamic breath, but it also ensures that we have access to a dynamic core, which stabilizes the rest of our body. So we're going to start by making two big C shapes with our hands. Our thumbs are going to go into the rear, pressing into the low back musculature. The index fingers are wrapping around so that we're pressing a little bit into the abdominals, and our side palms are pressing into our side body. And we're placing hands below the ribs and above the hip bone in that nice meaty section of our abdominal wall. So I don't want to be on top of bone. And I want to let the hands cinch in just a little bit because that's going to create resistance for our inhale. And we're going to expand out and away with the inhale breath. And I want to feel pressure pushing into the thumbs, into the index fingers, and into the palms so that we get that expansion of breath in a 360-degree area. We're going to breathe in through our nose, feeling that expansion, expand out and away. And on our exhale, we're drawing our navel up and into our spine. And we'll take about 5-6 breaths. I want to make sure that we're not taking such a deep breath that we're getting to a point of feeling dizzy or lightheaded. But see if you can feel that expansion of that abdominal wall on the inhale. On the exhale, we're fully expressing that air. Let the hands cinch in. And then immediately fill up that wall. With each breath in, feel that expansion out. And then on the exhale, draw the navel in, but also feel if there's any tension in the shoulders. Allow the shoulders to soften and relax. I don't want to have like real stiff shoulders. And get 1 or 2 more breaths. I want to sink this breath in, and so that we're going to kind of maintain this breath throughout the session. Now we're going to go ahead and grab our staff. We're going to do some light shoulder mobility. So with the staff, we're going to get about a shoulder width grip on the staff, and I want to imagine that we're trying to bend the staff or break it in two. And what that's going to mean is I want to spiral through my arms. Notice how my elbow pits are spiraling up. So I want to feel that break at the wrist. I also want to feel it at the elbows. And I also want to feel it at my shoulder blades. So as my elbows spiral in, my shoulder blades round up to my shoulders. As my elbows spiral up, my shoulder blades pack down like they're moving into my back pocket. And I want to maintain that spiraling throughout the arm and shoulder. We'll start with the bar down at our hip, and we're coming back to our breath, breathing into our belly. Exhale, drawing navel into our spine, and we're going to start getting some just light pelvic tilts. As we inhale and feel the belly fill up, allow the pelvis to tilt forward so that we get this nice sway in our low back. And then as we exhale, drawing navel into spine, I want to scoop the tailbone underneath so that we feel our core get a little bit tight and our butt should kind of squeeze, tense together a little bit. Inhale, filling it up, getting a nice sway in the back. Exhale, scoop, feel that light core engagement and that light tension in the glute. On the next inhale, as you exhale, we're now going to start to pull our elbows up to our ears. And I want to be slow on this. I'm exhaling as I scoop, and I want to see how far can we bring our elbows to our ears without pain. On the inhale, let the arms soften back down a little bit. Nice big breath, filling up the belly. Exhale, scoop, and squeeze the shoulders back a little bit more. With each one, inhale to exhale, we're squeezing those elbows a little bit further back making sure that we're not moving into a painful pattern. This should not be painful on the shoulders or on the low back. And we're going to do 5 up to 10 reps. With each one, see if you can get a little bit more squeeze. And I want to get that squeeze without losing our core, without losing our pelvis. So I don't want to have a big sway in the back when my arms are up. The sway in the back is when my arms are down. As I'm pulling the arms up, I'm scooping the tailbone into it. So we have this nice core engagement, and that glute is nice and tight and tucked at the same time that we're squeezing elbows back. After 10 of those, we're going to move the staff to behind the body. Palms are facing back and away. Again, about a shoulder width grip. And I want to have that same spiraling action of the elbows. So I want to continue to try to bend the staff, but I want to bend it as if I'm bending it away from my body. And that same spiral is going to be bending at the wrist, at the elbow, and the shoulder. So what I want to feel is as my elbows spiral, my shoulders pack down and back, and I feel this opening stretch in the front of the chest. What I don't want is elbows spiraling in to where the shoulders round forward. So we're going to start lifting the elbows. I don't want the shoulders rounding forward as I lift up. I want to have this opening. We're going to be lifting, continuing to feel that opening through the chest. So nice spiral bending, actively bending of the bar. Inhale, fill up that belly. Exhale, draw navel into spine, and then very slowly lift the elbows up towards the ceiling. Inhale, you can let the elbows soften. Exhale, lift and squeeze a little higher. And again, I want to make sure that as we're lifting, we're not losing our shoulders so that our shoulders are starting to round forward. I want to feel that opening. I'm kind of lifting up in the sternum as I'm lifting up through the elbows. The range of motion on this might not be very big for right now. I'm not concerned with how far you go. I'm more concerned with not painful. I want to move through, I want to feel, moving through tension, moving through some light tightness, but it should feel good and juicy, not painful. After 5 to 10 reps, we're going to flip our palms around so that our palms are now facing forward on our body. And we're continuing to do the same bending of the staff away from the body. So I'm still opening up that chest, still feeling the shoulder blades pack down and back. And we're doing the exact same thing we just did, just hands in a different position. Inhale, fill up the belly. Exhale, navel to spine. As you lift, elbows up slowly. Inhale, letting them soften. Exhale, squeezing a little bit higher. These are great movements to notice if there's more tightness or tension in your right shoulder versus your left shoulder. I want to notice which shoulder feels tighter. Does one side feel easier to get into than the other? After 5 to 10, we're going to let the arms come back down, but I want to keep this nice grip on the staff with that active spiraling. Shoulders are nice and depressed. Also want to get a nice shoulder width stance, so feet nice and spread. We're going to do some light neck mobility. So if you have any kind of vestibular, feel any kind of vestibular issue, you feel lightheaded or dizzy, then I'm going to suggest sitting down in a chair to do this next part, or getting all the way down on the floor. If you're feeling dizzy or lightheaded on this next part, I want you to stop and get into a safer position. So actively reach the staff down towards the floor so that your shoulder blades are as depressed as possible. You can even say mean things to them. It tends to depress them even more. We're now going to work on checking our blind spots. So very slowly, looking over the right shoulder. Inhale as we come back to the center, and exhale as we slowly look over the left shoulder. And I want to look over my shoulders without turning my shoulders. So as I turn my head, I don't want my shoulders to turn with me. So I want to stay really solid and fixed and only turn from my eyes. I'm really trying to see how far over my shoulder can I look, over my left shoulder and over my right shoulder. I want to notice, how does it feel on each side? Does one side feel tighter than the other? Are you able to go as far on the left side compared to the right side? Or is there a difference? Is one side is stiffer and tighter than the other, and you're not able to go as far, then that is going to be something of importance. After 5 to 10 on each side, we're now going to do some tilt and lift. So light tilt. I don't want to drop my ear all the way down to my shoulder, but I'm just lightly dropping it. And then my opposite ear, I want to imagine I got a piece of string that's lifting that ear up towards the ceiling. And that's going to create a little bit of light traction on the side of the neck. So inhale as we're at center, exhale as we tilt, and then lift that ear up towards the ceiling. Inhale as we bring it back, exhale as we tilt to the other side and lift. Nice inhale in the center, exhale as we reach. And as we're doing this, we can start to add a little bit of more downward press through the shoulders. We can reach down as we lift, especially on that same side shoulder, to create that extra bit of traction into the neck. Again, I want to stay light on this. I don't want to be forceful. I definitely do not want to move into pain, especially with the neck. But I do want to notice, how does it feel on the right side compared to on the left side? Is one side harder to do? Is it tighter, more restricted? Does it get really close to being painful compared to the other side? Good. And after 5 to 10 reps of those on each side, we're going to go ahead and set the staff down. Well, actually, we're going to keep the staff in our hand because we're going to do our 6 walks now. So just did some shoulder mobility, neck mobility. Now we're going to do some light foot mobility. This is also stability. This is great. 6 walks is great for anybody who has ankle instability. If you tend to roll ankles or you've recently sprained an ankle, this is something I would encourage you do every single day. So we're going to go through 6 different positions on each foot. Starting on my right foot, I am stepping out and in front slightly, and I'm only placing the ball of my big toe on the floor. So ball of the big toe is on the floor. The outside ball, from my 3rd toe, 4th toe, and 5th and pinky toe are off the floor, and the heel is off the floor. So I'm only loading on just that outside ball of the foot. We can have the staff for extra stability. We're going to start with just simple weight shift. Right now my weight is on my back foot. I'm going to shift my weight onto the ball of the foot. I don't want any of those other spots, points of the foot to touch. And I want the knee to slightly track internally as long as it is not painful on that knee. So we're going to inhale as we shift forward. We're going to exhale as we shift back, lightly pushing off the ball of the foot. Inhale as we come forward, exhale as we shift back. And I want to think like a spring. We're trying to load the springs of the foot in order to get those springs functioning well. So I want to load that spring, feel the weight of your body load into the arch of the foot, and then unload. Load and then unload. Again, knee is slightly tracking in. We're going to do 5 up to 10 reps of this. Inhale as we load, exhale as we unload. Once we get to 5 to 10, we're going to stay in the same position. We're going to stay on the same foot. We're still loading on the ball of the foot, but now I want to allow that load to come down so that I kiss the heel to the floor. Then we're going to lift the heel and then push off through the ball of the foot. So still just doing a weight shift forward, ball of the foot down to the heel, and then release the heel back to the ball of the foot. If this feels fairly safe, then we can get a little bit more dynamic where we let that foot completely release. We let the ball of the foot release. So we load to the ball of the foot, then the heel comes down, heel comes up, then the ball of the foot releases. And we can turn it a little bit more into a dynamic action. Once we do 5 to 10, now we're still keeping our foot in that same position. We are now shifting to our heel. And I want to be on the inside edge of the heel. And again, the knee is still slightly tracking inward. If you have any kind of meniscal compression, irritation, this can be a little bit uncomfortable. So I want to be really careful to make sure that we're not going into pain in that knee. Loading, shifting weight onto the heel, and then pushing off to shift that weight back. Inhale as we shift forward, exhale as we release. If this is not painful and you have good stability, I want to get more dynamic where we load the heel and then we release the heel. And again, I kind of want to think like a spring, even though the heel is not very springy in its nature. So once we've done the heel on that foot, we're going to shift to the other foot and we're going to do the same 3 positions, starting out with the ball of the big toe. Again, outside edge of the ball of the foot is off the floor and the heel is off the floor. Our step is coming out and away slightly. As we shift our weight onto the ball of the foot, our knee slightly tracks internal. And then as we push off to shift back, our knee goes straight. We're inhaling as we shift onto it, exhale as we shift off. I want to feel that light stretch in the arch of the foot. And on this one right now, the heel is not touching the floor. We're just loading into that arch of the foot and then shifting that weight back. All of these movements are good as far as paying attention to differences on one side compared to the other. So if one foot feels stiffer and tighter than the other, that is really relevant and worth bringing up in a consultation session. So once we've done 5 to 10, we're keeping our foot in that same position, but now as we load the ball, we're letting the heel touch, and then we're releasing the heel back to the ball. Again, shifting weight forward, being a spring, letting that spring load, and then feeling that spring unload. And if this feels good and safe and stable, then we can start to let that ball of the foot release from the floor. Ball loads, heel comes down, nice engagement of the spring, heel comes up, ball of the foot releases. Again, notice if one foot feels tighter, like does one foot work harder on these than the other? Then the third for this foot, coming up to the inside edge of the heel. Again, knee is going to slightly track internal, shifting that weight forward and then shifting that weight off. Inhale as we go forward, exhale as we push to our back foot. And again, if this feels stable, we can start to get a little bit more dynamic where we're pushing off the heel and then reloading it to the floor. Once we do 5 to 10 reps, we're now going to come back to the other foot and we're going to go to the outside edge of the foot. So now our step is going to be more straight in line and we're going to move to the outside ball of the foot. So I'm now only on the edge of my 4th and 5th, my pinky toe side of the ball of the foot. Big toe is side is off the floor and heel is off the floor. My knee is now going to slightly track out and away from the body. But again, I want to make sure it's not painful at the knee. Our weight is going to slightly shift forward onto the ball of the foot. And then as we exhale, we're shifting our weight back. inhale to exhale. And again, I want to feel as much of a spring, like we're trying to load that outside arch, the lateral arch of the foot, and then unload as we push back. If this feels strong and stable, we can get more dynamic where you load and unload the foot, letting the foot release from the floor. But I want to make sure as we come forward, we have good stability. We're getting into positions where I don't want to roll our ankle. It's part of the reason we also have the staff. So after 5 to 10 reps, we're staying in this same position, but we're going to let the whole foot come down to the floor. And from here, we're going to roll to the outside edge or the outside blade of the foot. So I got the entire edge of the foot. I'm rolling it all the way out. I want to be very, very cautious here because now we are getting into our ankle roll position. I want to make sure that any weight we put on that ankle we have the ability to stay stable on it. Again, we have our staff, so we can have that staff on this side in order to give us a little bit more stability. But be very cautious with how much weight we're going to put on that ankle in this position. So from here, knee is still slightly tracking out. We're shifting weight back on the exhale. We're shifting it forward on the inhale. And again, I only want to place as much weight as my body can maintain stability with. Inhale forward, exhale back. Now, if you have a good, strong, stable ankle, this can become a little bit more dynamic where we release the foot. Load the outside edge as we bring some that spring into it and then feel that foot release from the floor. But I want to stay extraordinarily cautious. Make sure that these are progressions that may take weeks or months to get to. Foot staying in this outside position, we're now moving to the heel, and I want to load more on the outside heel, edge of the heel. This is going to be kind of like where our foot naturally hits the ground in gait in our foot strike. Knee is still slightly tracking out and away. So we're shifting weight forward onto the heel and then shifting weight off of it onto our back foot. Inhale forward, exhale back. Again, want to think like a spring on this, even though the heel is not very springy. I want to feel the absorption of that load and the release of that load. And again, if this feels solid and you can do this dynamically, releasing the foot, loading the heel, releasing the heel. Once we get 5 to 10 reps, we're going to shift and do the same thing on the other side, starting with the ball of the pinky toe side. Again, that step comes out straight in front. Heel's off the floor, big toe side is off the floor, knee is slightly tracking out. We're shifting weight forward onto the ball and then shifting weight off. Inhale forward, exhale back as you push. And again, if this feels good and stable, we can start to let that foot release from the floor and load back to the floor. Again, I want to feel like that nice absorbing of a spring as that foot comes in. The entire leg all the way up to the hip is a spring. Load and unload. Then we'll let that foot go nice and flat to the floor. We're going to roll it all the way to the outside blade of the foot. And then we're doing the exact same thing, shifting weight forward. Again, making sure that we're not putting too much weight. I don't want to lose that ankle. And then shifting weight back. Inhale forward, exhale back. And again, if this feels stable, you have a strong ankle because you've been developing these for a while, then we can get a little bit more dynamic. Feel that foot release, load, and release. If it feels weak and vulnerable, then keep that foot in contact with the floor. Doing ankle stability drills would be the worst place to get an ankle injury. So now we're going to move to the heel. Again, hitting that outside edge of the heel, knee still tracks out, slightly out. Inhale as we shift forward, exhale as we shift back. And again, I want to feel as much of a spring as possible. And again, if you can do this dynamically, where we can load and then release that heel, ultimately that's going to really start to build the ligament stability in the joints. After 5 to 10 reps, we're going to set the staff down and we're going to very slowly come all the way down to the floor and getting into a quadruped position. So getting onto our hands and knees. I want to spread fingers nice and wide, ground palms, extend elbows fully without locking. We're going to do some light wrist mobility. We're only going to do about we'll do 5 to 10 reps on each of these, but I want to stay light and I want to make sure that we don't have pain in our wrists. So with nice spread hands, grounded palms, and extended elbows, I want to come back and reorganize our breath. So nice inhale in through the nose. Feel that belly, that abdominal wall expanding in all directions of our crocodile breath. Exhale. Feel the belly button draw into the spine. On the next inhale, allow your weight to shift back. Allow your hips to shift back towards your feet. As you exhale, we're going to shift our weight forward, and I want to load into our wrists lightly. I want to see how much can I shift forward to feel my wrists, and then inhale, I'm rocking off the wrists. With each exhale, I'm just seeing if I can go a little further over the wrists. Inhale, coming back. And as we're doing this, I want to start to notice if there's a difference between how the right wrist feels and the left wrist feels. Does one side feel tighter, stiffer, achier, more restricted than the other side? That's going to be incredibly important. Wrist issues are going to be things that show up as shoulder and neck issues. So I want to pay attention to the wrists. Next, we're going to turn fingers out to the side, and we're going to do a little bit of just nice, easy side-to-side glide. Again, moving over one wrist and seeing how it feels, and then moving across to the other wrist. We're inhaling as our body comes to the center line. We are exhaling as we move over the wrist. Inhale to center, exhale over. Again, how does that right wrist feel compared to the left wrist? Next, we're going to turn fingers as far back towards our knees as we can. The closer the hands are, the less intense this is. The further out we come, the more intense. I don't want this to be massively intense, so I kind of want to find a nice, comfortable position and see if you can ground your palms to the floor. On this inhale, we're going to shift our weight forward a little bit, and then on the exhale, we're letting our weight sink back hips to heels. That's going to get a nice big stretch on the forearms. I don't want it to be too big of a stretch. Remember, I don't want massive. I want nice and juicy. I want it to feel like we're in the light area of a stretch where it feels playful. I don't want a massive stretch. And again, notice the difference right side compared to left side. Although for this particular position, it's not uncommon for the dominant side hand to feel tighter and more dense than the non-dominant. Good. Last one we're going to do for our wrist is we're going to flip our palms over to the back side of the wrist, and we're going to allow our elbows to bend. This one can feel a little uncomfortable on the back of the wrist, especially if it's new, so I want to stay fairly light with it. We're going to focus primarily on the elbow joint first. So I want to lightly press into the floor to see how much can I extend my elbows, and if there is a stretch as I try to extend. If we feel stretch here, then that is exactly what I want to play with. I want to kind of lightly move into that juicy stretch and then let it bend and soften the stretch. Exhale as you extend into the stretch. Inhale as you let it soften.
And we'll do 5 to 10 of those to see if we can get a little bit more length of the elbow at the elbow joint. Can we get a little bit more extension? If you can extend the elbows fully and there's no stretch and there's no pain at the wrist, then we can do a little bit of rocking back, hips to heels. So inhale going forward and exhale as we lightly let our hips come back to heels. But I want to make sure that that is not painful, and I definitely don't want to force that one. And if we need to, we can get come off the wrist just a little bit to give it a little bit more flow back into the wrist space. We'll come back into that quadruped position, spread hands, grounded palms. And now I want to make sure that our toes are nice and tucked underneath. And we're going to do some toe mobility, specifically with the big toe. So I want to try to make sure that the heels are straight up and down or even slightly turned in towards each other. And the more turned into each other they are, the more we're going to get contact with just the big toe underneath. And I want to tuck that big toe as far as possible. I want to really feel it tucked underneath. I want to see how much extension can we get on that big toe. And now on our inhale, we're rocking forward, and on our exhale, weight of our hips is sinking back to our heels, and I want to feel the weight of our hips at the big toe joint. Can you feel that big toe getting stretched even more, getting pushed a little further into extension so that you feel some stretch into the arch of the foot? Inhale, we're coming forward. Exhale, we're very softly sitting into it. Again, I want to make sure that we are not going into pain. Big toe can be a source of pain, and it can be a problem for a lot of other areas of the body, especially the knees and the hips and the spine. So I want to be really, really soft. And notice the difference of the right big toe compared to the left big toe. Is one of them stiffer, tighter, more restricted than the other? Is one of them painful? If you're having tightness and restriction at the big toe joint, that's going to be a really big deal because the big toe is the driver of the school bus. And if you got one big toe that's tighter, stiffer, achier than the other, then you have a significant alignment issue in your school bus. And your school bus is pulling to one side of the steering wheel constantly. And that's going to have an impact on the other joints of your body. So I want to notice the big toe joint very, very specifically. Good. So we're going to come back up to our starting position. Toes are still tucked. And we're going to lightly sink hips to heels, but I don't want to be like super deep. I want to just be in a light tension. And from here, we're going to do some windshield wipers with our heels. We're going to let the heels roll all the way out to the pinky toe. See if you can get that pinky toe tucked underneath a little bit. And then we're going to roll the heels all the way in as if we're trying to touch them together. We're just going back and forth to kind of mobilize the rest of the toes and the rest of the foot. And again, 5 reps of this should be nice and sufficient. And then I want to let the ankles go nice and flat to the floor. We're going to come back to our inhale going forward, exhale, sinking hips to heels. Now we're kind of checking into the front of the ankle space. So as I'm sinking back, I'm seeing how close can I get my hips to touch my heels? Can I get them to touch? Or does one hip sit a little higher and is unable to touch compared to the other? That might be an indication. If you're not able to get hips to heels, that may be an indication of some inflammation within the knees, which makes this movement really, really beneficial to help flush that inflammation fluid out of the legs, out of the knees, and get it to be reabsorbed into the body. So if this is a stiff range of motion, then this is a range of motion that I would strongly encourage doing more frequently throughout the day. Also, I want to notice the front of the ankle spaces. So as we're sinking back, Do you feel tightness and tension in the front of the ankles? And as we sink back, if you're able to touch your hips to your heels, we can slowly start to load more weight and shift more weight onto it as long as it's not painful. And then we're bringing it all the way off. And so coming back to that front of the ankles, are the ankles tight? And is it more importantly, is one ankle tighter than the other ankle? Again, this is going to be relevant to how we walk. So I want to notice the imbalances, especially at the ankle joint, because that's going to impact other joints as well. Good. We're going to come back to our hands, nice grounded palms. Toes are tucked again. And we're going to spend a little bit of time doing some spinal waves, kind of cat-cow type work. But we're going to start with coming back to our breath. Breathing into our belly, I want to feel the belly move down to the floor so that we get this big sway in our low back. And then as we exhale, I want to draw that navel up and in so that we feel our tailbone scoop underneath. And we should get a light stretch in our low back. I don't want to let that movement go into the upper back. I'm not doing a full cat. We're just working pelvic tilts. So inhale, pelvis tilts down to the floor. We get a big sway in our back. I want to avoid any kind of pinch or pain in the low back on this. And then as we exhale, light scoop of that pelvis. See if you feel some stretch, some mobility stretch in the low back specifically. With each inhale, see if you can inhale a little bit further without going into pinch or pain. And the same thing on that scoop. Exhale, can you scoop a little bit further without going into pain in the low back or without going into that full thoracic cat? This is a great movement to get a good 5 to 10 reps, really working to open up that hip to low back space. On the next inhale, as we exhale, I now want to allow that movement to slowly move up the rest of the spine. So as we scoop, we're going to continue to scoop, and we're going to let that rounding move up the spine one vertebrae at a time. As it gets to the shoulders, we're going to push through our palms, feel the shoulder blades spread, then allow that movement to go over the top of the head. And imagine you're trying to touch your tailbone to your forehead at this imaginary space right here in the middle. And as you're doing so, can you feel your core kind of light up on fire? Then as you inhale, we're letting that pelvis draw back down, filling up the belly, moving the spine down to the floor. As it gets to the chest, the sternum is reaching to the floor, and then the head comes up last. Exhale, scoop, and see if you can feel each individual segment of your spine move one at a time from your tailbone all the way up to your head. And then same thing on your inhale. Inhale, the movement starts at the tailbone, moves up the spine, and the head lifts up last. See if you can feel that nice wave of the spine generated at the tailbone, as if the tailbone is the handle of a whip and the head is the tail of the whip. And that handle of the whip starts the movement. It moves up the spine one vertebrae at a time until it reaches the head. Nice. All right. So we're now going to shift into a V-sit position. This is getting a nice wide, as wide as you comfortably can. Want to try to sit on our sits bones. So if you're finding that your pelvis is a little bit scooped underneath, hands come behind to ground, spiral the elbows out and away. See if you feel some stretch in the chest and try to lift up your sternum. We can also kind of grab our legs and try to spiral them to help us get on those sits bones. If you're not getting on the sits bones right now, not a big deal. We'll work on this to get you more into this position over time. We're going to actively pull the top of the foot back, like you're trying to touch the front of your shin, and we're actively reaching our knees down to the floor. The more active you reach your knees down and the more you pull that foot back, the more you're going to feel your quad naturally tighten up. I want those quads kind of naturally engaged. And we're going to do spirals through the long leg bones. So I want to focus on our kneecaps. We're going to start by turning both knees out and away, like you're trying to touch the floor with your kneecap. And you're seeing how far can you go. Then on the inhale, as you bring it back to center, then you're going to continue to go and you're going to turn your kneecaps in like you're trying to touch the inside of the floor with your knees. Now, obviously, I'm nowhere near touching the floor, so the goal is not to touch the floor, but we're using those kneecaps as our guide. How close can you get the knees to the floor rotating away externally? And how close can you get them rotating internally? And notice on this as you're doing it, look at your right kneecap and your left kneecap. How far do they both go externally? Does one go further than the other? How far do they both go internally? Does one go further than the other? Is it the same one that goes further in both directions, or are they oppositional in nature to each other? This is going to be relevant to our gait mechanics. Noticing these imbalances is important. I also want to make sure this is not painful. We should feel this kind of hot deep in the hip socket, especially if we have those ankles actively pulled back, the feet pulled back towards the shins, and our knees actively reaching the floor. We should feel this deep in the rotators of the hips. Good. All right, so now we're going to shift into our shin box position. So shin box is I'm making a box with my shins. This is my left side shin box. My left knee is forward. My chest tends to face towards this side, and I can bring this hand down comfortably in order to brace and support. I want to spiral that elbow out and away to feel the shoulder pack down in a nice tall lifted sternum. I want to be really solid on this outside shoulder because I don't want to move a whole lot through my upper body right now. I want to focus on the hips. First one we're going to do is we're going to inhale as we we're focusing on this back hip, by the way. So I'm in my left side shin box. I am focusing on my right hip. On the inhale, I want to feel that hip drop down to the floor like I'm trying to touch the floor. On the exhale, I am scooping my tailbone forward like I'm trying to reach my hip bone, tailbone. I want to reach my hip bone and my tailbone like I have something in front of me that I'm trying to touch. I'm trying to get good hip extension here. So inhale, that hip drops down, which is creating a crease in my hip. So I have a bend. As I scoop into it and reach that hip forward, it's got to come off the floor. I'm trying to get as straight through the hip as I can. And I'm scooping into it. So I also want to feel my glute naturally contract. I'm not squeezing my glute. I'm moving my tailbone forward, and that naturally squeezes the glute. Inhale, I'm letting it all the way back down. Exhale, scooping into it, feeling that light stretch through the front of the hip. After about 5 to 10 of those, we're going to windshield wiper across to the other side. So my windshield wiper, I'm letting both knees up, keeping feet in contact with the floor, and very slowly transitioning from one side shin box to the other side shin box. So I'm now on my right hand, I'm in the right side shin box, spiraling the elbow out and away, packing that shoulder, and focusing on the back hip. Now I'm looking at the left hip. Inhale as we let that hip drop to the floor. Exhale as we scoop and reach forward. Now, things to notice on this is we're looking at hip balance. We're looking at a range of motion of our hips. So just like on the other side, I'm trying to get as much extension in this hip as I can.
I'm also seeing how much can I drop it down to the floor. And since we're doing the same movement on both sides, I want to compare. How does it feel on this side, especially as I scoop into it? Is the stretch bigger? Am I able to get as far? Can I feel that same level of engagement in the glute on this side, or is it less? As I drop the hip down to the floor on my inhale, do both hips come to the same resting point on the floor, or does one hip sit a little higher? It's not a big deal if it touches or doesn't touch, but it is a big deal if there's a difference between one side and the other. So if one side touches, I prefer that both sides touch. Or if one side doesn't touch, then I prefer that both sides don't touch. But if one side touches and the other side does not, then there's some imbalance in range of motion that is available at the level of your hips, and that is going to impact knees and ankles as well as your spine, shoulders, and neck. So I want to take notice of these things because those imbalances are relevant and they matter. So after 5 to 10 reps on that one, we're going to windshield wiper back across to the other side. And we're going to do the exact same movement. Inhale as we let that back hip drop. Exhale as we scoop into it, feeling that stretch and that contraction. And now we're going to add another movement into it. So we can take another inhale back, exhale, get into that scoop. I want to find that glute engagement first. I want to scoop into it. Can you feel your glute tighten up? Then I want to imagine we got a piece of bread in this spare hand, and you have a buddy who's angled at you right through that knee. And you're just going to reach out and hand that bread to that person. As you exhale, inhale, you're bringing it all the way back, allowing that hip to come back to the floor. Exhale, scoop first, feel the engagement of the glute, and then reach and rotate through it. As I reach, I'm not dropping my chest. I'm spiraling over this arm and seeing how far can I get those fingertips from that back knee. I want to get that nice rotational stretch. You may feel this in the front of the hip. You may feel this as a rotational stretch, especially as we add this reach. And then we're going to do the same thing on the other side. So a nice windshield wiper across as we go nice and slow, grounding that outside palm, spiral that elbow out and away. Inhale, letting that hip drop to the floor. Exhale, scooping into it. Again, I want to feel that stretch through the front. Can you feel that contraction in the rear? And then we're adding in our bread as we reach and rotate. If you already felt some tightness differences, one hip to the other, my guess is that as you add the reach and rotation, whichever side was tighter is going to be even tighter. Like this is, my left hip is generally my tighter hip. I've had 5 knee surgeries on my right knee alone. So my left hip tends to be the hip that works harder to stabilize for my right side. So my right hip is generally tighter, especially as I get into this extension. This is super tight. It's hard for me to get that glute. And when I apply rotation, oh man, it's so much bigger of a stretch on this side, which is why I have to work on this a little bit every day just to keep it from getting worse. The imbalances that I have are probably going to be more than likely there the rest of my life, but I can prevent them from getting worse, and I can oftentimes get a significant improvement, at least on a daily level. All right, coming back to the left side shin box, we're now going to start working into folds. So this is similar to like a pigeon, but I want to keep the legs in my shin box position for right now. And I want to use that front shin as a kind of our point of reference for keeping our chest and shoulders square. So I want to keep chest and shoulders square to that shin. We're going to inhale as we're up, and as we exhale, we're going to reach both hands evenly through that shin, and we're seeing how far forward can we reach both hands evenly. I don't want one hand to go further than the other hand. That means you're getting some rotation in your low back, and you're no longer square at the chest. So as we get that nice soft reach, we're going to inhale as we come back up. We're going to do 3 breaths here, and then we're going to go the other side. Nice exhale, and with each one, we're seeing if we can reach and drop our chest a little lower without forcing it. Inhale as we come back up. And once we've done 3, we're going to slowly transition to the other side, doing the exact same thing. Again, shin is square with the chest. Nice inhale at the top. Exhale as we reach both hands evenly. Inhale as we bring it all the way back up. And with each one, we're seeing if we can go a little bit deeper without forcing it. And we can start noticing if one side feels tighter than the other. And after we do 3, we're going to now shift back to the other side. So now we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to do 1 on each side. So we're going to transition all the way across, back and forth. So getting a nice reach as we exhale. Inhale as we come back up. And then we'll take another breath in and out as we transition from one side to the other, so that we're ready for a nice exhale as we reach. Inhale and transition back across. And by going back and forth on this, we can really get a good sense of balance between one side and the other. Notice, how does this feel as you reach through the right side? How does it feel as you reach through the left side? Where do you notice the differences? Do you feel more stretch in your low back? Do you feel it more in the glute on the side that you're reaching? Or do you feel it more in the back hip? Especially when you're on one side compared to the other. And we're going to do a good number of reps here, because as we go back and forth, we're hopefully getting a little deeper into it. And as you come back to your starting side, I now want to start to change the position of our shin box. I want to let that back leg start to slide open a little bit. By sliding open, we're no longer going to be using the shin as our square point for our chest. I'm now not as concerned with that. I just want a nice reach forward. By changing the position of that back hip, we're going to be getting a little bit different mobility sensation in the hips. So I want to go nice and slow. As we transition across to the other side, we're doing the same thing. Open that hip up a little bit. Exhale as we reach into it. And as we go back and forth with each one, we're going to slowly open that hip a little bit more until as far as you are comfortably able to do it without going into pain. And by going, what we're slowly opening that back hip into is what we would consider more of a yoga class pigeon pose. I'm not anywhere near it just yet, and I'm not really overly concerned with getting into that specific pose unless you can get into it easily. Right now, we're simply exploring space, and we're slowly opening that back leg up a little bit more, and then seeing how it feels to kind of drop into our fold. And what's the most important value that you can get out of this, other than just doing it and getting the nice coating of synovial fluid over all your joints, stretching that nice elastic tissue of your muscle and fascia. Like those are obviously incredibly fine qualities.
but we're also getting a really good indication of like what are the imbalances in our hips. Where does it feel tighter on one side compared to the other side? Where can I do it well in one direction compared to the other side? Good. All right, so last thing, we're going to go ahead and lay all the way down on our back. You can have your feet nice and flat to the floor. We're going to make two big C shapes with our hands. We're coming right back to our crocodile breath, but we're doing it from the floor instead of standing. So thumbs are going to go into the low back musculature. Index fingers are going into the abdominals in the front. And again, hands should be below the ribs, below that 12th rib and above the hip bone in that nice meaty section of the abdominal wall. And let those hands cinch in a little bit so that you have some good resistance to expand your balloon into. We're going to take a nice deep breath in through the nose, filling up that abdominal wall on the inhale. On the exhale, draw the navel all the way into the spine and allow the hands to cinch in a little deeper. And we'll get a good 5 to 6 deep cleansing breaths with each one. How much can you blow that balloon up, and can you feel it blowing up in all directions? This will be a good point to kind of assess the right side compared to the left side. Notice, does that expansion of the balloon move more on one side of the body? And do you find it difficult to get it to move into certain spaces on the other side? Specifically, side body and into that low back area. Those tend to be chronic areas in which the musculature tightens up and restricts in order to compensate for other areas of instability, but it means it's taking away from a level of your breath that we need to have access to. So if you're finding it difficult to breathe right side compared to left side, that is something that's relevant. This as a daily breathing practice will help to develop that expansion of your breath, which is going to help build your core stability. Core stability begins at the level of breath. And if you're not working on core work at the level of your breath, then you're not working on your core. Get another 1 or 2 breaths in and out. And then we can allow the hands to soften down, relax down to the floor. And I want to bring that same breath concept up into the ribs, into the chest, upper back, up into the neck and shoulders. So as you inhale, we're feeling that balloon expand. As we exhale, I want to feel that tension of the body release into the floor. So on your next inhale, let that breath expand into the ribs, into the shoulders, into the neck, and notice any areas where there's some tension. And you can spotlight that breath into that tension area. You want to do it lightly, not forcefully. And on the exhale, allow the tension to just release and drop down to the floor. As you feel that softening shoulders, softening neck, softening head, softening hips. When you're ready, you can open your eyes and very slowly sit up. I want to make sure we're not dizzy or lightheaded before we come into a seated or a standing position.